Company dinner. The male assistant Chase Donovan openly wrapped his arm around the CEO's wife, Evelyn Sterling, parading her from table to table. Showing off. I took a photo and forwarded it to the Sterling family chat. 10 minutes later, my father-in-law, Arthur Sterling, stormed into the hotel with his men, slapped her to the ground, and snarled, "Do you even know who you've pissed off?" Chase had his arm around Evelyn's waist, clinking glasses and toasting table by table. The whole banquet hall buzzing with cheers. He deliberately kept his hand steady, as if afraid someone might miss it. I sat at the edge of the main table, pulled out my phone, and snapped a picture of them. Evelyn wore a silver-white gown, her shoulder lightly leaning against Chase's chest. Chase bent down to shield her from a drink, a barely contained smugness on his face. Someone nearby laughed and shouted, "Assistant Donovan, you don't look like an assistant at all, more like one of the Sterlings." Chase didn't dodge it. He raised his glass and smiled. "Don't talk nonsense. Everyone, I just understand Ms. Sterling better than most." Then, he deliberately glanced at me. That glance was light as sweeping a useless cup off the table corner. Evelyn didn't push him away. She just frowned at the crowd and said in a mild tone, "It's a company dinner tonight. Let's keep it fun and not take jokes too far." Those words sounded like a reprimand, but to my ears, they felt like tacit approval because she didn't tell Chase to let go, and she didn't look at me. Chase, glass in hand, kept his arm around her as they moved to the next table. At each table, he introduced her projects, took drinks for her, and answered on her behalf. The collaboration data that should have been my responsibility rolled off his tongue as if he'd done it all himself. The finance manager joked half seriously, "Assistant Donovan's been climbing fast lately. Should we start calling you President Donovan soon?" Chase waved his hand modestly. "Ms. Sterling trusts me, so I can't let her down. As for some people taking up a seat without doing the work, it's about time they made room." We said that. The banquet hall went silent for a moment. Many eyes turned to me. I didn't say a word. I just sent the photo I'd just taken to the Sterling family chat. The group was called Sterling Family Chat. There were only 6 people in it. My father-in-law, Arthur Sterling. My mother-in-law, Margaret Sterling. Evelyn's uncle, George Sterling. Evelyn, me, and Evelyn's cousin, Ethan Sterling. After I sent the photo, I typed another line. "Dad, you said tonight I should wait until when?" The message went out, and the group went quiet for 3 seconds. Then Arthur sent a voice message. I didn't open it. Right after, he called me. I answered and said only one thing. "I'm at the 3rd-floor banquet hall of the Grand Young Hotel." On the other end, Arthur paused for 2 seconds. 10 minutes. I hung up. Chase had already made his way to my table with Evelyn. He saw me put down my phone, and his smile deepened. "Mr. Carter, why are you sitting alone? Everyone's having a good time today. Don't be so stiff. Ms. Sterling's been under a lot of pressure lately. I'm just taking a few drinks for her. You don't mind, do you?" He called me Mr. Carter, but his hand was still wrapped around my wife's waist. Evelyn finally looked at me. There was no guilt in her eyes, just impatience. "Liam, Chase is helping me with the socializing. Don't make a scene here." I looked back at her. 3 years of marriage, and she rarely called me sweetheart in front of others. At the company, she called me Vice President Carter. Outside, she called me Liam, only when she needed me to stay up late fixing her plans, filling in contracts, or handling crises would she lower her voice on the phone and say, "Honey, help me out this once." I set my glass down. "Am I making a scene?" Chase chuckled softly. "Good. I was worried you'd misunderstand. After all, Miss Sterling trusts me the most now. Some things might be hard for you to accept right away." A few senior executives nearby exchanged glances. Some sipped their tea. Others pretended not to hear. Evelyn's face darkened. "Chase, watch your words." Chase immediately put on an apologetic look. "Sorry, Ms. Sterling. I just feel bad for you. You're working yourself to the bone for the company, and some people just sit here waiting for you to cater to their feelings." That hit harder than before, but Evelyn didn't argue. She just looked at me as if waiting for me to take the hint. I nodded. "Are you done?" Chase froze for a second. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. "If you're done, take your hand off." The banquet hall fell silent. The smile on Chase's face stiffened for half a second. Then he leaned a little closer to Evelyn. "Mr. Carter, with all these people watching. Don't embarrass Ms. Sterling. Evelyn lowered her voice. 2. Liam, this is a celebration. Chase just landed the Eastwood Project. Don't cause trouble. Eastwood Project. When I heard those 2 words, I finally smiled. The underlying model for that project was built by me. The client was set up by me. The final risk control clause was also something I revised until 4.00 in the morning. Chase just took the documents I had prepared and read them aloud at the meeting. Now, it's become his project. I didn't explain because some things aren't mine to say. Just then, the banquet hall doors were pushed open from the outside. The door panel slammed against the wall, making a dull thud. Everyone turned their heads at the same time. Arthur Sterling walked in with 4 bodyguards and Sterling Group's legal director, David Press. He's 57, usually composed in front of others, rarely even slamming the table during boardroom arguments. But tonight, his face was ashen. Evelyn saw him and froze visibly. "Dad, why are you here?" Arthur didn't answer. His gaze first fell on Chase's hand resting on her waist. Chase jerked it away like he'd been burned, but it was too late. Arthur strode up to Evelyn. Smack! The slap landed. Evelyn stumbled sideways, her hand bracing against the table edge. A wine glass tipped over, red wine streaming down the white tablecloth. No one in the hall dared to speak. Evelyn covered her cheek, her eyes full of shock. "Dad, you hit me." Arthur pointed at her, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Do you even know who you've pissed off?" The moment those words left his mouth, the color drained from Chase's face. Evelyn froze. 2. She instinctively looked at me. I stood under the light, my jacket draped over my arm, saying nothing. Arthur turned to me, his tone dropping instantly. "Liam, tonight's incident. The Sterling family owes you an apology." In the banquet hall, someone's chopsticks clattered to the floor. Chase's Adam's apple bobbed. He finally realized that the man he'd been stepping on and showing off in front of during this dinner might not be the loser he thought. And I looked at Evelyn. The confusion on her face stung more than that slap. She still didn't know that what she truly crossed wasn't my temper. It was that she'd cut off the Sterling family's lifeline herself. As Evelyn was taken away by her father, she kept looking back at me. That look wasn't regret. It was disbelief. She couldn't understand why her father would slap her in public for my sake. Even less could she understand why a husband she deemed okay to neglect, to ignore, to let suffer a little in front of others had suddenly become someone Arthur called untouchable. Chase reacted faster than her. He immediately followed, his voice trembling. "Mr. Sterling, tonight I overstepped. Don't blame Miss Sterling. It was all because I was trying to take the drinks for her." Arthur stopped walking. "Shut up." Chase froze on the spot. Arthur stared at him, his eyes cold as knives. "Who do you think you're to speak for her?" Chase's lips twitched. The man who'd been boasting table to table moments ago now looked like his spine had been ripped out. Evelyn finally snapped back to reality and stepped in front of Chase. "Dad, Chase is just an employee. There's no need to take it out on him." Her father looked at her, laughing in fury. "An employee? An employee dares to put his arm around you while toasting table to table? An employee dares to openly make snide remarks at Liam? An employee dares to claim the Eastwood Project as his own achievement?" Evelyn's face changed. She instinctively glanced at Chase. Chase immediately lowered his head. "Ms. Sterling, I didn't mean it that way. Whether you meant it or not doesn't matter," I said. Everyone turned to look at me. I put my phone in my pocket, my tone steady. "What matters is that Miss Sterling thought it was fine." Evelyn frowned. "Liam, do you have a talk like this now?" I nodded. "Yes." She was choked by my response. For the past 3 years, I rarely spoke to her in this tone, even when she canceled our anniversary dinner last minute to entertain clients, even when she had Chase move into the lounge next to the CEO's office, even when she credited my achievements to Chase time and again. I never embarrassed her in public. She was used to it to the point of thinking I'd always back down. Evelyn took a deep breath, lowering her voice. Chase was indeed out of line tonight, but with so many company people here, you let Dad make a scene like this. How am I supposed to manage the team from now on? I looked at her. When you're being held by the waist and toasting table to table, Did you ever think about how I'd face the company afterward? Her eyes flickered. Chase immediately cut in. Mr. Carter, it's really not what you think. Miss Sterling and I are completely innocent. Just a work relationship. If you're uncomfortable, I'll keep my distance from now on. I didn't look at him. What you need to keep isn't distance. It's your place. Chase's face went pale. Evelyn's patience had completely run out. Liam, that's enough. She covered her face. Her eyes reddened, whether from grievance or anger. She couldn't tell. I'll handle today's matter. But don't you go blowing things out of proportion. Chase has really helped me a lot lately. The Eastwood Project, the North Bay funding, the Southland Supply, chain coordination. He was involved in all of them. You can't negate his work just because of some personal feelings. Her father-in-law's face darkened even more at those words. But I just smiled. Fine. Evelyn froze. I continued. Since he's helped you so much, starting tomorrow, I'll stop participating in the Eastwood Project, stop handling the North Bay funding, and stop coordinating the Southland supply chain. Let Assistant Donovan keep helping. Evelyn's brow immediately furrowed. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. I handed the work tablet I always carry to David Press beside me. From tonight onward, I'll only do what's within my job description. All the systems, guarantees, and client relationships I've maintained on a personal basis. Free assistance stops now. Evelyn finally panicked for a moment. Liam, the company isn't a place for you to throw a tantrum. I looked at her. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I paused. I'm handing over. Those two words landed, and Evelyn's hand reaching for the tablet froze midair. But Chase seized the opportunity. Mr. Carter, isn't this a bit irresponsible? Ms. Sterling just got slapped by Mr. Sterling in public, and now you're threatening her with the company. With that one sentence, he positioned himself as the one speaking up for Evelyn. Sure enough, Evelyn turned to me, her gaze turning cold again. Liam, if you're really unhappy, talk about it at home. Don't drag the company's interests into this. I didn't explain further because she still thought that the company's interests and I were just dragged in. She had no idea that every seemingly stable step the Sterling Group had taken over the past 3 years had my name at the very foundation. Arthur said in a low voice, Liam, go home for now. I'll handle the rest. I nodded as I turned to leave. Chase suddenly said behind me, Mr. Carter, I'll go to the tech department tomorrow to handle the permission handover. Don't worry. I'll keep the project steady from Ms. Sterling. I paused for a step. Fine. Chase didn't expect me to agree so quickly. I turned back to look at him. As long as you can take it. The next morning at 9:00, Chase indeed went to the tech center. He stood in front of the system manager, Ben Patel, holding the permission transfer application signed by Evelyn. His tone firm. Starting today, I'm taking over the Carter Core System project. Vice President Carter has already agreed to the handover. Ben read the application, his expression odd. Mr. Donovan, we can't transfer this permission. Chase frowned. Ms. Sterling signed it. Ben turned the screen to show him. Even Ms. Sterling's signature won't work. Chase's face darkened. What do you mean? Ben pointed to the column for the highest permission owner. There were only 2 words. Liam Carter. And the ownership type wasn't an employee account. It was the original authorizer. Chase stared at the screen, his eyes shifting little by little. At the same time, my email received an automatic alert. Carter Core System highest permission transfer request failed. I read it and shut down my computer. On my desk, the resignation handover was already on page 3. I knew the real counterattack was just beginning after his first setback. Chase didn't back off. At 2:00 in the afternoon, he brought Evelyn to the tech center in person. As soon as Evelyn entered, all the tech staff stood up. She saw me sitting in the corner organizing documents, and her face visibly darkened. Liam, do you have to make things this ugly? I looked up. What thing? The permissions. She slapped the application Chase had onto my desk. The Carter Core System is the management system Sterling Group has been using. Chase is now in charge of the Eastwood project and needs the highest permission. Are you blocking it to sabotage the project progress? I picked up the application and glanced at it. It had her signature and a space for Chase's sign-off. But there was no authorization confirmation for me. I placed the paper back on the desk. This isn't Sterling Group property. Evelyn's brow twitched. What did you say? The tech center was so quiet you could hear the air conditioner. I opened my computer and pulled up the authorization agreement from 3 years ago. The Carter core system source code, core algorithms, and underlying risk control modules are under my personal ownership. Sterling Group has usage rights, not disposal rights. Transferring the highest permission requires my written consent. Chase immediately said, Mr. Carter, isn't that going too far? The system runs on Sterling Group servers, and the company pays you a salary. How can you say it's yours personally? I looked at him. Your salary buys my job service, not my intellectual property. Chase's face stiffened. Evelyn stared at the screen, hesitation flickering in her eyes for the first time. She wasn't clueless about contracts. She just had never seriously read this one. Because 3 years ago, when she took over as CEO, the Sterling Group was barely holding on. Her father was bedridden. Banks were calling in loans. Suppliers were demanding payment. The system was crashing, and overseas funds had suspended investments. That was when I stepped in with the Carter core system, rebuilding the risk control and supply chain models for Sterling Group. I didn't ask for equity. I didn't reveal my identity. I only signed a licensing agreement at the time. Evelyn said, Liam, once Sterling Group stabilizes, I'll make it up to you later. Sterling Group stabilized, and she forgot. Evelyn was silent for a few seconds. So, what do you want now? Follow the contract. I flipped the agreement to page 3. Sterling Group can continue using the basic functions, but the project level highest authority, the financing risk control interface, and the exclusive Southland supply chain module all require my separate authorization. For the past 3 years, I've been maintaining them for free. Now, I'm stopping the free service. Chase immediately sneered. At the end of the day, you're still using the company to force Ms. Sterling to bow. I ignored him. Evelyn looked at me. Do you have to do this? It's not about having to. I said, it's about already done. Her chest rose and fell once. Liam, last night was just a misunderstanding. I finally lifted my eyes to meet hers. A misunderstanding? I pulled out my phone and placed a photo from last night on the desk. Chase had his arm around you as you toasted table by table. That's a misunderstanding. The employee is joking that he looks like a Sterling. That's a misunderstanding. Him saying I'm just taking up space without doing anything. That's a misunderstanding. You telling me not to make a scene. Still a misunderstanding. With every word I said, Evelyn's face grew darker. Chase quickly cut in. Mr. Carter, don't take things out of context. We were all drinking. It was just the vibe. You weren't drunk. I stared at him. Every word you said. You made sure I could hear it. Every move you made. You chose the most crowded spot. It wasn't a vibe. You thought I wouldn't flip the table. Chase's mouth twitched. I continued. Too bad you guessed wrong. I'm not flipping the table. I closed my laptop. I'm pulling the table out from under you. The tech lead lowered his head and coughed, not daring to speak. Suddenly, Evelyn's phone rang. She glanced at the caller and answered. It was the finance director, his voice so urgent that even those nearby could hear. Ms. Sterling, the risk assessment interface for North Bay funding has stopped. The bank demands we resubmit the data by 5 p.m. or this week's loan disbursement will be delayed. Evelyn whipped her head toward me. I was calm. The North Bay funding interface is part of the Carter Core premium module. She gripped her phone tighter. You shut it down. Not shut down. I corrected her. The free license expired. Chase immediately said, Ms. Sterling, don't worry. I'll have the tech team rebuild the interface. Ben's face went pale. Mr. Donovan, that's not something we can rebuild in a day or two. Chase glared at him, then work overtime. Ben couldn't help glancing at me. That glance carried both reluctance and a plea for help. I lowered my head and sorted the last document. For the past 3 years, I'd often gotten these calls in the dead of night. The finance interface crashed. Call me. The supply chain data was wrong. Call me. The overseas fund needed a sudden audit. Call me. Evelyn only had to stand in the spotlight and say, great work, team. Everyone who patched the holes in the dead of night became part of her team. Now, I'm done patching. Evelyn hung up, her voice finally softening a bit. Liam, North Bay funding is very important. I nodded. I know. then turn the interface back on first. I can. Just as a flicker of relief appeared in her eyes, I slid a quote across the table. Per the contract, emergency service fee is $300,000, with project-level interface maintenance billed separately. Chase blurted, "Are you insane?" I looked at Evelyn. "Ms. Sterling, business is business." The color drained from her face. This time, she finally understood I wasn't arguing with her as a husband. I was formally charging Sterling Group as the licensor. And she finally realized that Chase's so-called takeover couldn't even touch the first door. The news of a North Bay funding delay didn't last until the next day. At 10 a.m., the finance department ran to the CEO's office 3 times. At 11 a.m., the bank's risk control manager personally called, demanding that Sterling Group provide a complete model explanation and original logs. Chase sat in the meeting room, holding an old template I had made before, and spoke for less than 5 minutes before being interrupted. "Mr. Donovan, what you're saying is just the results. We need to know how the model's underlying weights are set, how supplier performance risk is calculated, and why abnormal orders are classified as level 3 warnings." Chase flipped a page. That page was blank because the core algorithm was never in the project files. Only I knew. Evelyn sat at the head of the table, her face growing darker. "Chase, didn't you say you were familiar with this part?" Sweat beaded on Chase's forehead as he forced a smile. "Ms. Sterling, I'm familiar with project execution. The technical details were always handled by Vice President Carter," the bank manager said coldly. "If Mr. Carter isn't involved, we need to reassess Sterling Group's risk control capabilities." Those words hung in the air, and no one in the meeting room spoke. Evelyn looked at me. I sat at the very end, with no computer in front of me, only a notebook. "Liam, you explain." I looked up. "I'm just attending today." She gritted her teeth. "I'm telling you to explain. Ms. Sterling." My tone was calm. "Explaining the model falls under Carter Corps' authorized services. Sterling Group hasn't purchased that service yet." Chase slammed the table. "Liam, this is a company crisis, and you're still haggling over money." I looked at him. "Aren't you the one in charge now?" He was choked by my words. Evelyn's face stiffened. "Two." Hearing this, the bank manager packed up his materials. "Ms. Sterling, let's end today's meeting here. Once your company confirms the authorized person, we'll talk again." As soon as he left, Evelyn finally exploded. "Liam, what exactly do you want? Stop providing unauthorized services. You're my husband. Last night at the banquet hall, you didn't seem to introduce me that way." She was left speechless. Chase immediately stepped in. "Ms. Sterling, he's doing this on purpose. He knows the company can't function without the system, so he's using it to leverage you. Keeping someone like him in the company is a liability." I closed my notebook. "Then fire me." The meeting room fell silent again. A flicker of joy crossed Chase's eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. Evelyn, however, didn't respond immediately because she knew that once I left, many things would become much more complicated. But she didn't want to back down in front of Chase, so she could only say coldly, "Don't think I wouldn't dare." I nodded. "I'll wait for the notice." With that, I stood up and left the meeting room. In the afternoon, the supply chain ran into trouble again. The long-term framework agreement that Voss Global was about to sign was suddenly put on hold. The other party's business contact only replied with one sentence: "Without Mr. Carter present, we can't confirm whether Sterling Group still has the capability to fulfill its obligations." When Evelyn saw the email, she smashed her cup. Chase stood beside her, his face dark. "Ms. Sterling, Voss Global doesn't respect you at all. You're the one running Sterling Group. Why do they only recognize Liam?" Evelyn didn't say a word. She wanted to ask that question, too. At 7 p.m., she called me for the first time on her own. I was at home, tidying up the study. This home was a villa arranged by her mother after our marriage, but there was very little in it that truly belonged to me. A few books, a computer, some contracts, and a wedding ring. The phone rang 3 times before I answered. She spoke in a commanding tone. "Come back. We need to talk." "I'm at home." She paused. "I'm at the company. Work hours are over." She caught her breath. "In the past." She never had to worry about whether I was off work. As long as she called, I'd come even at 2:00 in the morning. Even if I was on a business trip, I'd revise the plan overnight. She was silent for a few seconds, then lowered her voice. Liam, the company is in a serious situation right now. I know. Then why aren't you coming? I put the last book into the box. Ms. Sterling, for serious situations, please go through the official process. The line went quiet. Then her voice turned cold. Are you forcing my hand? I looked at the ring on the table. That ring was very plain. When we got married, she said a secret marriage shouldn't be too flashy. So let's keep it simple. I didn't mind at the time, but now I realize that many things that were kept simple at first stayed simple forever. I said, Evelyn, I'm not forcing you. I'm just finally not cleaning up your messes anymore. She hung up. Half an hour later, I received the company's legal notice. The wording was harsh. It accused me of slacking off, refusing to hand over work, and impacting major project progress, demanding that I complete the full transfer of all permissions to Chase within 24 hours. The signature was from Sterling Group Legal Department. The CC was Evelyn. After reading it, I forwarded it to Arthur. He replied with just 5 words. Proceed with your plan. I opened my computer and placed 3 files into the same encrypted folder. The first was the Carter Core System Authorization Agreement. The second was the Overseas Guarantee Termination Notice. The third was the audit trail of Chase's misconduct. The folder name was simple: liquidation. The next morning, Evelyn called an emergency executive meeting. When I arrived, the conference room was already full. Chase sat on her right. That used to be my seat. In front of him was a laptop, and on the table, a thick stack of documents. Seeing me walk in, he deliberately looked up and smiled. VP Carter, finally showing up today. I didn't respond. Evelyn looked at me, exhaustion from a sleepless night in her eyes. But her tone remained hard. Sit down. I took the seat at the very end. Chase immediately turned on the projector. On the screen appeared an incident summary. North Bay, funding delayed. Voss Global contract suspended. Financial interface anomalies. Eastwood project data missing. The last page listed the responsible party under my name. Liam Carter. Chase stood up, his voice heavy with gravity. Everyone, over the past few days, the company has faced a series of issues. On the surface, it looks like system and project handover problems. But the root cause is VP Carter's refusal to cooperate with the transition. He clicked to the next page. These are the email records I compiled last night. They prove that I repeatedly requested permission from VP Carter, but he kept stalling. I stared at the screen. A few emails had indeed been sent to me, but the timing was telling. 1:00 a.m., 3:00 a.m. For 30 a.m., Chase sent emails after I clocked out, and if there was no reply within 10 minutes, he marked them as urgent. No response. It was a low-level tactic, but effective for those who didn't know the details. Evelyn finished reading, her expression darkening. Liam, do you have anything to explain? I asked. Do you want an explanation, or do you want the result? She frowned. What do you mean? I placed a document on the desk. This is my resignation handover checklist. Everything within my job responsibilities has been organized. Personal authorizations outside my role are not part of the handover. Chase immediately jumped in. See, he admits it. He's treating company resources as his own bargaining chip. I looked up at him. Mr. Donovan, you're wrong. I pushed the second document forward, not treating them as they are. A low murmur rippled through the room. Evelyn stared at the document, but didn't open it. She seemed to sense it wouldn't contain what she wanted to see. Chase, eager to show off, reached for it. I pressed down on the file. This one you're not qualified to see. His hand froze midair. Several executives nearby turned to look at him. Chase's face flushed red, then white. Evelyn said coldly, Liam, don't go too far. I released my hand and slid the file to her. Ms. Sterling can take a look. She opened it. The first page was the authorization agreement. The second was an appendix from the Sterling Group crisis restructuring years ago. The third bore Arthur Sterling's handwritten signature. The more Evelyn read, the tighter her fingers gripped. Chase sensed something was wrong and leaned in. Ms. Sterling. Evelyn snapped the file shut. Get out. Chase froze. Ms. Sterling. I said get out. Chase's face turned ugly instantly. But with so many people watching, he could only force a smile. All right, I'll step out for now. As he reached the door, he glanced back at me for the first time. There was malice in his eyes. After the door closed, Evelyn lowered her voice. Why didn't I know about this agreement? You signed it. Impossible. I flipped the file to the last page in the signature block. There was indeed her name. It was 3 years ago when she first took over as CEO. She was overwhelmed at the time, and I handed her the document saying it was Sterling Group's last safety net. She didn't read it carefully. She only asked me, will you always help me? I said yes. So she signed. She remembered my yes, but forgot what the document clearly stated. Authorization could be revoked. Guarantees could be terminated. And maintenance services were not part of employment obligations. Evelyn's face went pale. So you had a backup plan from the very beginning. I shook my head. Not a backup plan. A boundary. She looked at me, then suddenly smiled. That smile was cold. Liam, you're terrifying. 3 years of marriage and you still guard against me. I looked at her. Evelyn, 3 years of marriage and you still think it's just a joke when I'm publicly humiliated. Her smile froze. Suddenly, arguing erupted outside the meeting room. The door swung open and Chase burst in clutching another document. Ms. Sterling, I found the evidence. He slammed the file onto the table. Liam privately contacted Voss Global, deliberately making them suspend the signing. This isn't a normal resignation. This is malicious sabotage of the company's partnership. Evelyn whipped her head toward me. Chase's eyes gleamed with triumph. He thought he'd caught me red-handed. I picked up the so-called evidence. It was an email from Voss Global's head to me. The content was just one sentence. Mr. Carter, if you no longer provide performance guarantees for Sterling Group, we need to reassess the cooperation. I put the email back down. Chase said, see, he admits it. I pulled out my phone and brought up the original agreement from 3 years ago. The main signatory column. It wasn't Evelyn Sterling. It was me, Liam Carter. The smugness on Chase's face cracked. Bit by bit, I turned to Evelyn. You can let him keep investigating. The deeper he digs, the faster he dies. The Voss Global meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Evelyn initially didn't want me to go, but Voss Global only replied with one sentence. If Mr. Carter doesn't show, the meeting is canceled. That sentence made Chase's face sour for an entire day. He still took the main signatory seat, not because he deserved it, but because Evelyn wanted to give him one last shred of dignity. In the meeting room, Voss Global sent 3 people. Leading them was Vice President Julian Voss. The moment he walked in, he bypassed Chase and came straight to me. Mr. Carter, long time no see. I stood up and shook his hand. Chase, sitting in the main seat, forced a smile, but his fingers tightened around his pen. Evelyn saw this, and her expression shifted slightly. After Julian Voss sat down, Chase immediately opened his proposal. Mr. Voss, for this Eastwood project, I'll be representing Sterling Group as the point of contact. There were some misunderstandings during the internal handover, but rest assured, I'll ensure smooth progress. Julian Voss didn't respond to him. He flipped open the first page of the contract. Mr. Donovan, I have a question. Go ahead. Who is the performance guarantor for Sterling Group? Chase hesitated. Of course. It's Sterling Group. Julian Voss looked up. Specifically, who? Chase frowned. Mr. Voss, does a group action need to be pinned down to an individual? Julian Voss pushed the contract forward. Yes. 3 years ago, Voss Global's cooperation with Sterling Group was based on the supply chain risk control model, emergency fund guarantees, and data tracking system provided personally by Mr. Carter. Whether Mr. Carter continues to fulfill these obligations determines whether we sign. The smile on Chase's face faltered. Mr. Voss, Liam Carter is just Sterling Group's vice president. Julian Voss glanced at him. Mr. Donovan, you might be mistaken. He placed an old contract on the table. In Voss Global's cooperation records, Mr. Carter isn't a Sterling Group employee representative. He's the Carter Core System licensor, the project risk control lead, and the joint signatory for the performance guarantee. The meeting room fell silent. Evelyn stared at that contract. her eyes growing heavy. Chase tried to fight back. That's all old cooperation structure. Now, Ms. Sterling is the head of Sterling Group, and I'm the project lead she appointed. Julian Voss nodded. The appointed lead can be changed. He paused. The guarantor can't be swapped casually. I stayed silent the whole time until Julian Voss looked at me. Mr. Carter, what's your take? I placed the file in my hand on the table. Effective today, I terminate my personal guarantee for Sterling Group's Eastwood project. Chase shot up from his seat. On what grounds? I looked at him. Because my name is on the guarantee letter. Julian Voss immediately instructed the legal team to record it. Evelyn finally spoke. Liam, do you know what terminating the guarantee means? Yes. The Eastwood project will be delayed. Financing costs will rise. And Voss Global might pull out. MHM. She stared at me. You just want to watch Sterling Group fall apart? I didn't avoid her gaze. Sterling Group falling apart isn't because I'm terminating the guarantee. It's because you put someone who can't even understand a contract structure in charge of the project. Chase's face turned pale. Liam, don't you dare slander me. I opened the third document. This is the email Chase's assistant sent on behalf of the Eastwood project over the past 2 months. It contains 7 core data errors, 3 unauthorized commitments, and 1 instance of privately modifying the payment milestone. Julian Voss took the document, and the more he read, the darker his expression grew. Chase's hands began to tremble. These are all normal communications. I was just trying to push the project forward. Normal communications? I flipped to the last page. You promised Voss Global an early release of the advance payment without financial approval. You told the supplier Sterling Group that the purchase price would be increased without cost assessment. You even used my old signature stamp to issue a confirmation letter. Chase suddenly turned to Evelyn. Ms. Sterling. I didn't. He's framing me. Evelyn's lips tightened. Her gaze at me was so complex it felt unfamiliar. I placed a voice recorder on the table. This is the audio automatically saved by the audit system when you asked admin to destroy the signature stamp usage records yesterday. The color drained completely from Chase's face. I pressed play. His voice came through. Don't keep these things. Liam is falling out with Ms. Sterling now. If he starts investigating, it'll be trouble. Do as I say. When the recording ended, the only sound left in the meeting room was the air conditioner. Julian Voss closed the document. Ms. Sterling, Voss Global needs to reassess the cooperation risk with Sterling Group. Evelyn didn't answer. She looked at Chase. It was the first time she had looked at him with genuine suspicion. Chase panicked. Ms. Sterling, believe me, Liam is deliberately driving a wedge between us. He can't stand that you value me. Evelyn said nothing. I stood up, adjusting my cuffs. Mr. Voss, my stance is clear. Julian Voss nodded. Understood. I turned and walked away. When I reached the door, Evelyn suddenly called out to me. Liam. I stopped. Her voice was low. How much more have you been hiding from me? I turned back to look at her. What you should be asking is how much you've missed in these 3 years. She sat at the conference table, her expression finally shifting, not anger, but hesitation. But hesitation came too late. After that day, Chase was noticeably subdued for 2 days. He no longer actively appeared in front of me, nor did he rush to post project updates in the company group. But I knew he wasn't backing down. He was looking for a chance to counterattack. Evelyn started messaging me frequently. The first one, can a North Bay funding interface be restored? I didn't reply. The second one, is there any room for negotiation with Voss Global? I replied, per the contract. The third one came at 11 o'clock p.m. coming home. I stared at it for a long time, then turned off my phone. The word home used to mean a lot to me. Now it's just a door lock password. The next day, Arthur called me to the Sterling estate. When I arrived, Evelyn was already there. She was wearing a black suit, hair makeup light, the slap mark on her face no longer visible, but the exhaustion in her eyes couldn't be hidden. Arthur sat in the main seat, a cup of tea in front of him. Evelyn apologized to Liam. Evelyn's fingers tightened. Dad, apologize? She bit her lip and looked at me. At that moment, she still wasn't willing not that she didn't want to bow her head. but she didn't understand why she had about me. Liam, at the dinner party that day, I didn't handle the boundaries well. She waited 2 seconds. No follow-up. Arthur slammed the teacup down heavily. Just boundaries. Evelyn's face turned ugly. Then what do you want me to say? Chase and I don't have any improper relationship. He just drank too much that day. And everyone was just joking. I looked at her. You still think the point is whether anything happened between you? She froze. Isn't it? I shook my head. No, the point is that you knew he was stepping on me. Yet you let him keep doing it. Her eyes trembled. Arthur closed his eyes. Evelyn, I didn't say anything when you brought Chase into the president's office. I didn't say anything when you let him participate in the project. But you let him use what Liam built to humiliate Liam. This isn't just being muddle-headed. This is forgetting your roots. Evelyn's face paled a shade. Those 2 words hit harder than that slap. She whispered, Dad, I admit I didn't handle it well. But Chase does have ability. In the 6 months he's been by my side, he's taken a lot off my plate. I couldn't help but laugh. She immediately looked at me. What are you laughing at? I said, what he took off your plate was the result of my work. Her eyes turned cold again. Liam, can you stop targeting him with every word? Arthur was furious. You're still defending him. Evelyn pressed her lips tight. The air froze. Just then, Arthur's secretary walked in, handing over a file. Mr. Sterling, the audit department just received documents regarding Chase's expense reports and project signatures. Evelyn's head snapped up. The secretary glanced at me. I showed no expression. Of course, the documents weren't anonymous. I'd had them sent, but I didn't need to explain. Arthur opened the file, his face growing colder by the second. Over the past 3 months, Chase has reimbursed 12 times for high-end hotel suites. Noted his project reception. Evelyn's expression shifted. What hotels? The secretary quietly listed a few names. 2 of them were ones she'd stayed at during business trips. Chase had reimbursed for the room next door. Arthur continued flipping. Also, 5 gift purchases. The recipient wasn't a client. It was his own mother. Evelyn's fingers began to pale. He told me those were for the wives of our partners. Arthur sneered. Do the partners' wives have the surname Donovan? No one spoke. I stood up. Mr. Sterling, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Evelyn suddenly stood. Liam. I stopped. She looked at me, her voice tight. When did you start looking into these? From the first time he used my old signature stamp. You knew all along. Yes. Anger flared in her eyes. Then why didn't you tell me? I looked at her. I did tell you. She was taken aback. I said calmly. I told you Chase wasn't fit for core projects. You said I was jealous of his youth and drive. I told you not to give him access to the CEO's office permissions. You said I was too controlling. I told you he was taking credit and stirring up trouble in the team. You said I couldn't tolerate newcomers. With each word, her eyes retreated a step. Finally, I placed a file on the table. This is the draft of the divorce agreement. Evelyn saw those words and snatched it up. She glanced at it once, then tore it apart. Shreds of paper fell to the floor. Her chest heaved. I don't agree. I looked at the mess on the ground. It doesn't matter. The final version will be sent to your company by my lawyer. With that, I turned and left the Sterling estate behind me. Arthur called out tiredly. Liam. I stopped but didn't turn around. His voice was low. The Sterling family has wronged you. I said, Dad, this is the last time I'll call you that. In the living room, Evelyn's breathing was clearly erratic. She finally realized I wasn't trying to force an apology. I was preparing to leave completely. Sterling Group's problems began to erupt in a concentrated burst. First, North Bay funding was delayed. Then, the Eastwood project was suspended by Voss Global. After that, suppliers demanded reconfirmation of payment guarantees. The most fatal blow came when the overseas fund sent an official letter demanding confirmation of whether Liam Carter would continue as the joint risk guarantor. When Evelyn saw that email, she sat in her chair for a long time without moving. The email was CC'd to the board. That meant she could no longer suppress the news. That afternoon, an emergency board meeting was called. I didn't attend, but Arthur had the secretary send me the meeting recording. In the recording, the directors' voices grew sharper with each sentence. Ms. Sterling, Why wasn't the board informed in advance about the change in the core guarantor? Isn't the Carter core system a group asset? Then how do you explain the technical capability in the past 3 years' financial reports? Who promoted Chase Donovan? How did an assistant gain access to the VOS global contract and financing interface? Evelyn's voice remained steady. I'll handle the issues. But the directors weren't buying it. How? If Liam Carter doesn't sign now, North Bay funding won't come through. The VOS Global project is suspended, and the Eastwood land costs are piling up daily. Ms. Sterling, give us a clear timeline. Chase was also at the meeting. He was still struggling. Directors, Liam Carter is now overly emotional. The company cannot be held hostage by one man. I propose we immediately form a new tech team to replace the Carter core system. A director asked, how long for the replacement? Chase paused. Conservative estimate, 3 months. Another director sneered. 3 months? The Eastwood project can't even hold out for 3 weeks. The meeting descended into chaos. Finally, Arthur spoke. Start an internal audit first. Chase's tone shifted noticeably. Mr. Sterling, the priority now is solving the project, not internal strife. Arthur said only one thing. What are you afraid of? The recording ended there. I put down my phone and opened my laptop. On the screen was the authorization backend for the Carter core system. Sterling Group status still read basic authorization active. I didn't shut off the basic authorization because thousands of regular employees still needed their salaries and the grassroots operations couldn't be disrupted. What I revoked were the value-added modules that had been propped up by my personal credit. At 7 p.m., Evelyn showed up at my temporary apartment. She stood at the door, holding a file in her hand. I opened the door, but didn't let her in. She looked at me, her eyes a little red. Can you sign this once for the overseas fund? I asked. As what identity? She froze. I continued. Husband, employee, authorizer, or the guy who still has to clean up the mess after being humiliated in public by your assistant. Her lips trembled. Liam, I know you've been wronged. You don't know. She looked up. I stare back. What you know is that the company is in trouble. So you came to me. That hit a nerve. Her face went pale. I admit I've neglected you before, and I admit Chase did a lot of things he shouldn't have. But Sterling Group can't fall apart now. Help me this once, and we'll talk things out later. I glanced at the file in her hand. It was a temporary guarantee confirmation letter. If I signed, the overseas fund would continue to release funds. Sterling Group could catch its breath. Chase could live a few more days. I didn't take it. Evelyn, I've helped you too many times in the past. Helped to the point where you thought that as long as you turned around and said, let's talk later, I'd keep doing it. Her eyes were fully red now. Then what do you want? Boundaries. I handed her a file. This is the guarantee termination notice. It takes effect tomorrow at 9 a.m. She took the file, her hands shaking. Do you really have to go this far? Yes. Aren't you afraid Sterling Group will collapse? I was afraid before. I looked at her. 3 years ago, when your father fell ill, I was afraid. When the banks called in the loans, I was afraid. When you hid in your office, crying alone, I was afraid, too. She jerked her head up. Clearly, she didn't expect me to remember. Of course. I remember that night. She locked herself in the CEO's office, crying silently. I stood outside the door for 10 minutes, then finally pushed it open and placed a restructuring plan on her desk. She grabbed my hand and said, Liam, I really can't hold on anymore. I said, I'll help you hold on. And I did hold on for 3 years. Held on until she thought it was all naturally hers. I pulled myself back to the present. Now, I'm not afraid anymore. Evelyn stood at the door, as if those words had drained her strength. She whispered, what about us? I said, my lawyer will contact you. Tears fell from her eyes, but she didn't say another word. As she turned to leave, her phone rang. It was probably the audit department on the other end because after she answered, she listened for a few seconds and her face changed. What did you say? Chase went to the archives room last night. She turned to look at me. I showed no surprise. Chase had finally panicked. Panic leads to mistakes. The surveillance footage of Chase breaking into the archives room was captured at 1:47 a.m. He wore a mask and a baseball cap, entered through the fire escape, and used the admin department's backup access card. He thought that card wouldn't leave a trace. But the Carter Core System's access log recorded the underlying chip ID, not the name on the card. The next morning, Sterling Group was scheduled to hold the Eastwood project launch. Chase insisted on going on stage as planned. He told Evelyn, "There are already rumors outside that Sterling Group is in trouble. If we cancel the launch, it'll only confirm the gossip. Let me go up there, and I can steady the situation." Evelyn didn't agree right away. She no longer trusted him unconditionally like before. But she didn't have a better option either, because I refused to attend. The launch was set for 10 o'clock a.m. I sat in the backstage lounge, watching the live broadcast. Chase, in a deep blue suit, stood on stage, still wearing that polished smile. To all media and partners, the Eastwood project is the core strategy of Sterling Group for the next 3 years. Regarding recent speculation about internal restructuring, I can clearly tell you Project Progress is on track. As his words faded, a representative from Voss Global raised a hand. "Mr. Donovan, is Liam Carter still serving as the project's risk control lead?" Chase's smile froze. "The project belongs to Sterling Group and doesn't rely on any single individual." The other pressed on. "Has the Carter Core System licensing issue been resolved?" The media perked up instantly. Chase's face tightened. "Those matters are internal company affairs and won't affect the overall project." Just then, the big screen at the press conference suddenly switched. The screen, originally playing the project promo, now displayed a licensing status notice. Carter Core System Eastwood Project Value-Add Module Authorization Terminated. The crowd erupted. Chase spun around backstage. A technician stammered, "We didn't cut it. It's an automatic sync from the partner's side." I stood at the backstage entrance, tablet in hand. Evelyn hurried over from the other side, stopping dead when she saw me. "You did this. The system automatically syncs the real status." Her face went pale. On stage, Chase was losing it. "Everyone, don't misunderstand. This is just a technical adjustment. It'll be restored soon." The Voss Global representative stood up. "Mr. Donovan, without authorization, we can't continue our partnership. Please provide a clear explanation from Sterling Group." Sweat beaded on Chase's forehead. Just then, the head of the audit department, Rachel Moss, walked on stage with legal counsel. Evelyn's expression shifted violently. "Who sent them up?" I said, "The board." Rachel handed Chase a document in front of everyone. "Mr. Chase Donovan, regarding allegations of forged signatures, fraudulent expense claims, and unauthorized destruction of project documents, you are hereby ordered to cease representing Sterling Group immediately and cooperate with an internal investigation." The flash bulbs exploded beneath the stage. Chase stood frozen like a statue. His first instinct wasn't to explain. It was to look at Evelyn. "Ms. Sterling, say something." That shout drew everyone's eyes to Evelyn. She stood at the edge of the backstage, her face ashen. Chase panicked, his voice turning shrill. "This wasn't my call alone. You told me to take over the project. You said to bypass Liam Carter if he didn't cooperate. You told me to grab the permissions." The scene erupted. Evelyn swayed. I reached out and grabbed the doorframe beside me. Not her. Chase had finally shown his true colors. He was never loyal. Just someone who called you Ms. Sterling when the wind was at your back, and threw you under the bus when it turned. The legal counsel said coldly, "Mr. Donovan, watch your words. All your actions are documented. Whether others are involved will be investigated further." As two security guards led Chase off stage, he kept shouting, "Ms. Sterling, I did it all for you. You can't abandon me." Evelyn stood there, drained of all color. The media snapped photos like crazy. The board members' faces were stone. Arthur was there, too. He stood on the other side, silently watching the whole circus. Evelyn finally turned to him, her voice hoarse. "Dad," she asked the question that had come far too late. "Who is Liam Carter?" "Really?" Arthur looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "You want to know now?" The light in Evelyn's eyes shattered piece by piece. Arthur turned and walked out, back to the old house. He didn't call for me, but I knew the truths buried 3 years ago were finally about to surface. In the study of the Sterling estate, the light was dim. Evelyn sat on the sofa, as if all her sharp edges had been stripped away overnight. Arthur opened the safe and pulled out a craft paper envelope. It was old, with a date written on the seal. 3 years ago. He placed it in front of Evelyn. "Read it." She opened it. The first document was a bank loan recall notice. The second was a joint demand letter from suppliers. The third was a cash flow projection for Sterling Group at the time. The last was a personal guarantee agreement I had signed, along with a no-fee authorization document for the Carter system. Evelyn flipped through page by page, her fingers growing stiffer. Arthur's voice was heavy. 3 years ago, Sterling Group was on the verge of bankruptcy. "You think I pulled it through?" Evelyn said nothing. "It wasn't me." Arthur looked at me. "It was Liam." Evelyn jerked her head up. I sat at the desk, offering no explanation. Arthur continued. He pulled out the Carter system to rebuild Sterling Group's risk control. He went to see Julian Voss at Voss Global and secured the first supply chain deal. He used his personal credit to stabilize Sterling Group's overseas funds. Evelyn's eyes instantly reddened. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Arthur let out a cold laugh. "What would it have done? You had just taken over as CEO with the board waiting to see you fail. I said not to put the credit on him, to let you get your footing first." Evelyn turned to look at me for the first time. Panic flickered in her eyes. Not the panic of a corporate crisis, but the panic of realizing she had been catastrophically wrong. Arthur pulled out another document. "This is the supplementary agreement I signed with Liam before your marriage." Evelyn froze. She opened the file. It stated that if during the marriage, Evelyn severely harmed Liam's interests, Liam had the right to terminate all personal guarantees and authorizations, and retain the right to pursue liability. Her voice trembled. "Dad, why did you sign this?" Arthur looked at her. "Because I know your nature. You've always been proud. Once you make up your mind, it's hard to turn back. I was afraid that one day you'd mistake Liam's concessions for weakness and his sacrifices for something you deserved." Evelyn's tears splattered onto the paper. Arthur's voice grew heavier. "In the end, I still couldn't prevent it." She covered her face. The study fell silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "So that day at the hotel, when you hit me, it was because of this?" Arthur stared at her. "I hit you because you let an outsider trample on Sterling Group's benefactor in front of everyone." Evelyn's shoulders trembled. Arthur continued. "You thought Chase was holding you, humiliating Liam. You were wrong. He was holding the CEO of Sterling Group, humiliating the face of the Sterling family. What's even dumber is that you defended him." Evelyn finally sobbed out loud. She looked at me. Her voice shattered. "Liam, I didn't know. I cut her off." "You did." She froze. I looked at her. "You knew Chase was crossing the line. You knew he was provoking me. You knew I was uncomfortable. You just didn't think it mattered." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I placed the last document on the table. "This is the official divorce agreement." Evelyn's face went pale. "Liam, plus the authorization termination notice, guarantee release letter, and Voss Global Cooperation resigning declaration." I looked at her. "I'll submit all of them at tomorrow's board meeting." She shot to her feet. "Do you have to be this ruthless?" I stood up. "Too. Evelyn, you think this is ruthless now because I'm finally acting according to the contract. For the past 3 years, I treated you with emotion, and you treated me with management. Now, I'm treating you with rules, and you want me to use emotion." Her tears froze on her face. Arthur closed his eyes and didn't try to persuade her anymore because he knew it was pointless. I grabbed my coat, ready to leave. Evelyn suddenly grabbed my sleeve from behind. Her voice was so low it was almost inaudible. "If I had pushed Chase away that day, if I had defended you on the spot, would it not have come to this?" I didn't turn around. There are no ifs. Her hand slowly loosened. I walked out of the study. I heard her calling my name from behind. "Liam." I didn't stop. Some people don't realize you're hurting. They just think you'll stay even after the pain. But this time, I won't. On the day of the board meeting, Evelyn sat at the head of the table. But everyone knew she was no longer secure in that seat. Before the meeting started, news spread through the company that Chase had been taken away by the police for investigation. No one in the employee group called him President Donovan anymore. No one talked about his youth and drive. Those who once toasted him started silently deleting group photos from their feeds. When I entered the meeting room, Evelyn looked up at me. Her eyes were noticeably red, and the divorce agreement lay beside her hand. Arthur sat in the chairman's seat, his face exhausted. David Press spoke first. According to the internal audit, during his tenure, Chase Donovan engaged in unauthorized reimbursements, improper use of signature stamps, unauthorized commitment of payment milestones, and suspected destruction of project documents. The company has submitted the evidence. Next, Rachel Moss reported, on project losses, the numbers were more staggering than the last. Evelyn didn't argue once. When it was my turn, I opened my file. First, the basic authorization for the Carter core system will be retained for 3 months to allow Sterling Group to transition without affecting grassroots operations. Someone breathed a sigh of relief. I continued. Second, the authorization for the value-added module of the Eastwood project is terminated. The atmosphere in the meeting room tightened again. Third, the personal guarantee for North Bay funding is officially released. The finance director's face changed color. Mr. Carter, without the guarantee, the financing cost will rise by at least 2 percentage points. I nodded. I know. He wanted to say more, but was stopped by Arthur raising his hand. I flipped to the last page. Fourth, the cooperation framework with Voss Global will be taken over by a new company under my name. The Sterling family can participate in the bidding as a supplier, but will no longer hold exclusive rights. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire meeting room erupted. Evelyn suddenly looked at me. New company? Yes. When did this happen? The day you had Chase take over the Eastwood project. The expression on her face looked as if she had been stabbed hard. Not because of the new company, but because she finally understood that I had already decided to leave back then. Arthur was silent for a few seconds, then spoke. Board vote. The result was no surprise. Evelyn was suspended from her position as president and transferred to the group strategic committee pending further investigation. The interim president was taken over by Arthur again. After the meeting ended, Evelyn chased me into the hallway. Liam, let's talk. I stopped. She handed me the divorce agreement. I can sign it. I looked at her. What's the condition? Her eyes were red. Can you not take Voss Global away? I smiled. Her face instantly turned pale. Maybe she realized herself that those words were hard to hear. In the end, her first reaction was still the company. I took the agreement. Evelyn, I didn't take Voss Global away. They chose not to believe in you anymore. Her lips trembled. What about us? Do you not believe in me anymore either? I looked at her, and only after a long time did I say, I stopped believing a long time ago. Those words hit harder than any argument. She stood in the hallway as if someone had pressed her pause button. At 3:00 in the afternoon, we went to the county clerk's office. On the way there, she was very quiet. When going through the procedures, the clerk asked as usual, is this voluntary on both sides? I said, voluntary. Evelyn held the pen, hesitating to put it down. The clerk looked at her again. She looked up at me, her voice very soft. Liam, if I say I regret it now, is it too late? I didn't look at her tears. It's not too late for the paperwork. A glimmer lit up in her eyes. I continued, but it's too late for the feelings. That light went out. She lowered her head and signed. When her name was written, the tip of the pen slightly tore the paper. With the divorce certificate in hand, she stood at the door, not leaving. Will you ever think of me in the future? I put the certificate into my bag. Yes. She looked up. I said, to remind myself not to give my concessions to the wrong person again. All the color drained from her face. I didn't stay any longer. As I walked out of the county clerk's office, the sun was shining brightly outside. My phone rang. It was a message from Julian Voss. Mr. Carter, the signing documents for the new company are ready. I replied with 2 words. Let's begin. From that moment on, Liam Carter was no longer the husband behind Evelyn Sterling. I was myself. On the day the new company opened, representatives from Voss Global, overseas funds, and several old suppliers all came. No red carpet, no extravagant ceremony, just a very simple sign. Carter Tech. Julian Voss stood below the stage, smiling at me. Mr. Carter, this time you finally don't have to hide behind someone else. I smiled. I wasn't hiding before. He nodded. You were yielding. I didn't respond to that. In the past few years, I had indeed yielded. I let Evelyn stand in the spotlight. Let the Sterling family keep their dignity. Let Arthur recover in peace. And let this marriage not look so pathetic. But a person can't keep yielding forever. Yield for too long, and people will think you have no other path. The signing ceremony went smoothly. Carter Tech officially took over the risk control system for the Voss Global Eastwood project and reached a new round of cooperation with overseas funds. After the news spread, Sterling Group stock fluctuated briefly, but because Arthur took over in time, it didn't crash. This was the last bit of dignity I left behind. Not for Evelyn, but for Arthur. Chase's case had a result a month later. Forged signatures, illegal reimbursements, destruction of documents, embezzlement of company assets. The evidence chain for several charges was complete. His mother returned those so-called client gifts. He himself was formally prosecuted. I heard that inside. He even tried to write letters to Evelyn, saying it was all her fault. Evelyn didn't see him. She's no longer the president of Sterling Group. She got transferred to a fringe department in charge of sorting through old projects. Her office moved from the top floor to the 12th. Her permissions were revoked. Her assistant was replaced by someone assigned by the group. The people who used to swarm around her thinned out a lot. The last time I saw her was downstairs at Carter Tech Tower. She stood by the roadside wearing a plain trench coat, holding a paper bag in her hand. When she saw me come out, she took 2 steps forward, then stopped. I'm not here to beg for a reconciliation. She spoke first. I nodded. Yeah. She gave a bitter smile. Now you won't even bother asking one more question. I didn't say anything. She handed me the paper bag. Inside was that ring and an old notebook. The notebook was the crisis plan for Sterling Group I wrote 3 years ago. She said, I found it while sorting through old projects. So back then, you only slept 3 hours a day. I looked at the paper bag, but didn't take it. Her eyes reddened. Liam, I really didn't know back then. I said, now that you know, remember it well. Her fingers trembled. Remember what? Remember that not every retreat is because of weakness and not every silence is because you can't leave. Tears fell from her eyes. The wind by the roadside was light, messing up the stray hairs on her forehead. She used to be a proud person. So proud she thought everyone would revolve around her. But now, she finally learned to bow her head. Only I no longer needed it. She said softly, Dad said what I lost isn't a husband. I looked at her. She continued, he said what I lost is the sturdiest pillar of Sterling Group. I shook my head. He's wrong. She froze. I said, what you lost is a man who once genuinely wanted to build a life with you. After I said that, she broke down completely. But I felt calm inside. No satisfaction. No reluctance. Just felt like this 3-year-long drama had finally ended. I didn't take the paper bag. Handle the ring yourself. She choked out. You really don't have any attachment left. I looked toward the entrance of Carter Tech. Someone was waiting there for me to start a meeting. New project, new team, new life, no attachment left. With that, I turned and walked inside. Behind me, she didn't call out again. Later, I heard from Arthur that Evelyn had changed a lot. She started reviewing contracts herself, running projects herself, apologizing to frontline staff herself. She finally understood that a company isn't propped up by a few flashy press conferences. And she finally understood that loyalty from those around you isn't earned by indulgence. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. 6 months later, Carter Tech completed its second round of funding. The Voss Global project went live ahead of schedule. Overseas funds added more investment. Someone asked me in an interview, Mr. Carter, why did you leave Sterling Group back then? I thought for a moment and said only one thing, because I didn't want to be a card no one saw anymore. Off camera, Julian Voss clapped with a smile. I smiled, too. That night, I passed by the Grand Young Hotel. The lights at the entrance were still bright. I remembered that dinner party. I remembered Chase with his arm around Evelyn, showing off at every table. Remembered taking that photo and sending it to the Sterling family chat. Remembered 10 minutes later, Arthur storming into the hotel and asking her, do you know who you pissed off? Back then, Evelyn didn't know. Chase didn't know either. They both thought I was just a jealous husband sulking after being cold-shouldered. But real payback was never about making a scene. It's when you pull your hand out from under the table and then let everyone realize that the whole table had been held up by you all along.